Friends, hello everyone. Today we're going to dive into one of the most thrilling and honestly quite sad stories about car twins, or clones. Remember, I recently told you about the Lexus RX 270, where one car lived a peaceful life while its exact copy with the same VIN caused a ton of problems. Well, back then, I promised I'd come back to the topic of twins in more detail, because there are a huge number of them out there, and some schemes are just mind-blowingly brazen. And today is that day. The story we're talking about dates back to 2015, and people are still dealing with the fallout to this day. It all started when a family from Bishkek decided to buy a brand new Porsche Cayenne. They flew to Berlin to an official Porsche dealer, picked out a car in the perfect configuration, black metallic, panoramic roof, the full package. They completed all the paperwork, sales contract, acceptance certificate, PTS or its European equivalent, a nice branded folder, and happily flew home. The car itself was loaded onto a car transporter and calmly shipped to Kyrgyzstan via Kazakhstan. There it was cleared through customs, registered, got local plates, and they drove it trouble-free for several years. Life was good. The car was a joy. Now fast forward to 2021. The owners decide to sell the Cayenne. They take it to a local dealership, put it on consignment, and pretty quickly a buyer shows up. He starts checking the documents, and that's when the real drama begins. The buyer, smart guy, doesn't skip a beat and runs the car through every possible database, including European ones. And what does he find? In Germany, another Cayenne is happily driving around with the exact same VIN. That second one had already been to a pawn shop, racked up loans, gotten a bunch of enforcement orders from bailiffs, and restrictions on registration actions. The buyer, of course, says, "Thanks, guys, but I don't need that kind of happiness. Tomorrow they could declare it wanted and seize it. I'm out." And he goes looking for another option. So, what really happened? It all came down to one seemingly minor oversight. When the original black Cayenne was picked up from Berlin and shipped to Kyrgyzstan, they forgot to do one important thing: properly register the export from the European Union. They needed to submit the documents to the relevant authorities so the car would be officially marked as exported from European databases. That didn't happen. Somewhere along the way, from Berlin to Bishkek, someone very observant spotted the PTS or its details, photographed it, scanned it, and realized, here's a gift from fate. A brand new, expensive Porsche, not yet registered in Europe, with clean documents. This information was quickly passed to the right people. They found a similar Cayenne, though not black but brownish-grey, and apparently in a hurry because they picked a pre-facelift version, while the original was already the updated one. They forged the documents and registered the car in one of the European countries, first in a small region where apparently checks weren't as thorough. In the documents, they claimed the car was supposedly produced locally, even though everyone knows Cayennes aren't assembled on the sly in Europe, listed the color as brown, and issued plates. Then, to avoid standing out with regional plates, they re-registered everything in a major city, like Berlin, for example. They claimed the old documents were lost, got new ones on fully genuine protected forms. The car started driving around Europe without issues, changed a couple of owners, the third owner pawned it, took out loans, and there it was, loaded with restrictions. Meanwhile, the original had been peacefully cruising around Bishkek the whole time, until the owners decided to sell it and learned that their perfect car was listed in European databases as problematic. When the original owners contacted me, they were in panic. What do we do? If we go to Europe to sort it out, they might just take the car from us. I gave them advice on how to proceed, but the story got put on the back burner for a while. There was a lot going on. And then, when we were filming that very Lexus video, I remembered this Cayenne, pulled the VIN from my archives and decided to check how it all ended, and I was stunned. All the restrictions and bans on the clone had been lifted, the loans were paid off, and get this, the car had recently been sold openly, with photos, a description, and even a picture of the registration certificate clearly showing that same VIN, and somebody bought it. Somebody paid around $25,000, about 2.3 million rubles at the time, and registered it. The person most likely has no idea they bought a clone. To clearly show the difference, I requested data straight from the Porsche factory. The original came in black metallic, panoramic roof, black window trim, a compass on the dashboard, and the facelifted body. The clone was brown, no panorama, no compass, on regular coil springs, though at one point in service they calibrated the air suspension, which it never had in the first place. That's the kind of thing that makes you grin from ear to ear. This is a classic example of how clones create massive problems for the owners of the originals. Everything the clone does, loans, accidents, bans, automatically sticks to the original in the databases, and then you have to prove you're not the camel, i.e. innocent. These schemes work because car registration databases in different countries aren't connected. If at least the former Soviet countries and Europe linked their databases, so many clones would be exposed that it would be a disaster for the scammers. Friends, let's dive deeper into this story, because it's like a good detective novel. The more you dig, the more interesting details surface. I promised we'd cover the topic of clones in detail, and now's the perfect time to add some color, examples, and a bit of dark humor so you don't get bored listening about bureaucracy and fraudsters. So, quick recap of where we left off. We have the original black 2015 Porsche Cayenne, bought in Berlin, taken to Kyrgyzstan, and its evil twin, a brown pre-facelift version that cruised around Europe peacefully, racking up debts and bans, and eventually got sold to some poor guy for $25,000. The new owner is probably still thinking he scored a great deal. Wow, a fresh Cayenne for the price of a used sedan. In reality, he bought a ticket to a lottery called "When Will the Police Stop Me and Seize the Car?" Now let's imagine how all this looked from the scammer's point of view. This wasn't just one guy in a basement with a printer forging documents. It was an entire chain. Someone on the route or in the transport company photographed the original's PTS, step 1. Passed the photo to the specialists, step 2. They quickly found a similar car, well, almost similar. The color was different, but who cares at the initial stage? Forged the documents, registered it in a quiet corner where inspectors probably don't see new Cayennes every day, and then the magic of bureaucracy. Declared the old PTS lost, got a new, genuine protected form, and voila, the car is clean as a whistle. Everything checks out in the databases, protections in place, plates from, oops, sorry, Berlin plates. You know what's the funniest part? When the clone was serviced at an official Porsche dealer in Germany. Imagine the conversation at the service center. "Good day, my air suspension is acting up, please calibrate it. Mileage 38,000. The technician looks it up in the computer, sees that according to the VIN the car should be on coil springs, but in reality it has air suspension, which it never had in the first place, and what does the technician do? He calibrates it, because the customer is always right and the computer, well, maybe it's a glitch. In the end, the service history has an entry, air suspension calibration performed, but the original never had air suspension. These little inconsistencies are like Hansel and Gretel's breadcrumbs in the forest. They lead you straight to the truth. Now let's talk about why these schemes are even possible. It's all because car databases in different countries are like separate kingdoms. The US has one huge system, Europe has its own, Asia has another. There's no single global registry where all VINs are checked instantly. If such a registry existed at least between the former Soviet countries and Europe, half the clones would surface immediately. Imagine someone tries to register the car in Berlin and the system says, "Stop, this VIN is already registered in Bishkek." End of story.
But until that happens, scammers feel like fish in water. And the saddest part, ordinary people suffer. The original owners in Bishkek lived in fear for years. What if they're stopped at the border tomorrow? What if the car ends up in Interpol's database? They didn't even know that the clone had already been sold to a new owner, who might now be happily speeding down the Autobahn and posting pics on social media, "My new beast." By the way, about that new owner, when I checked the ad for the clone, it was a classic too good to be true case. Price $25,000 for a 2015 Cayenne in good condition. On the market, similar cars were going for $35,000 to $40,000 and up. A $10,000 to $15,000 discount is always a red flag, but people fall for it. Well, the owner is hurrying, moving, needs cash fast.
We've already broken down the main plot with the Porsche Cayenne. An honest family from Bishkek buys their dream car in Berlin, takes it home, and meanwhile, somewhere in Europe, an evil twin appears, living a flashy but criminal life. Loans, pawn shops, bans, and eventually gets sold to an unsuspecting guy for $25,000. Funny? No, more like sad. But let's dig even deeper, because the topic of clones is like an iceberg. What's on the surface is just a small part. Under the water hides an entire industry. First, let's figure out why these schemes are still thriving in 2025, even though technology has advanced far. You'd think a VIN is a unique code, like a fingerprint, 17 characters encoding the car's entire life, country of manufacture, factory, year, configuration, even the serial number. One VIN, one car. But in reality, it's not that simple. Databases in different countries are still not unified into a single global system. Europe has its Schengen information and national registries, the US has NMVTIS and a bunch of private databases, Asia has its own, and countries like Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Armenia generally operate by their own rules. There's no single world police that would say, "Stop, this VIN is already taken in another country." Imagine the situation. You buy a car in Los Angeles, take it to Canada, and meanwhile, someone makes a clone in Mexico. While borders are open, documents get scanned, photos get shared, and voila! A couple of months later, the clone is already registered in Texas, and no one notices until an insurance claim or a serious check happens. By the way, about insurance claims. One of the most profitable schemes with clones is insurance fraud. You make a clone of an expensive car, insure it fully under comprehensive coverage, say for $80,000 to $100,000, then stage a theft or total loss in an accident, you get the payout, and goodbye. The car is actually alive and well, just repainted and with new plates, and the original is somewhere far away, still driving around. I know cases where the same model was stolen 3 to 4 times through clones. Insurance companies tear their hair out afterward, but it's hard to prove. Another favorite for scammers, car pawn shops and microloans. You take the clone, pawn it for $30,000 to $40,000, get the cash, then do it again somewhere else, and repeat. When it all collapses, the car is loaded with bans and you disappear, and the new owner, who buys it later for peanuts, has to deal with the mess. Remember our Cayenne? That's exactly what happened. The third owner of the clone racked up loans and bans, then the car got cleaned and went to a new, lucky buyer. Now let's talk about how clones are actually created. It's not just alter the numbers and drive off, it's a whole technology. First, they find a donor, a car with a suitable VIN. Best if it's a fresh car, not yet registered in the country it's being taken to. Like in our case, the Cayenne was just picked up from the dealership in Berlin, documents clean, not registered in Europe. Perfect. Next, forging documents.
In the old days, it was amateur stuff. Printer, scanner, Photoshop. Now it's a higher level. They print on genuine forms, stolen or bought from the right people, apply real stamps, also bought from the right people, enter the data, and then the genius move. Declare the old PTS lost and get a new, fully legal one. The system issues it automatically because the car is already in the database. And that's it. The clone has become real. In our Porsche, there was a funny mistake. In the initial documents, they claimed the car was produced locally in a small European region. But everyone knows Cayennes are only assembled in Leipzig or Slovakia. It's like saying Ferraris are made in a garage under Berlin. They were in a hurry, apparently, but even that mistake didn't stop the scheme. Now, imagine the feelings of the original owners. They're cruising in Bishkek, kids are happy, wife is pleased, and suddenly in 2021 they learn their car is listed as problematic in European databases. How is that possible? We bought it honestly. Panic, calls, letters. When they contacted me, I immediately said, keep all the evidence, the contract from Berlin, acceptance certificate, receipts, photos with the dealer, factory data from Porsche, that's your shield. If the car ever surfaces in Europe, you'll have an ironclad alibi. By the way, I checked later, the situation with the clone resolved itself. The bans were lifted, apparently the loans were paid off or written off, and the car went to a new owner. That guy is probably still happy, until he decides to sell or runs into a serious check. And the original in Bishkek, I hope, is still serving faithfully. Let me tell you another story from my practice so you understand how common this is. A year ago, a guy from Warsaw bought a 2018 Audi Q7 in excellent condition. Price $15,000 below market. The seller, car from the US, restored after a minor accident, documents in order. The guy checked European databases, clean. Registered it, drove for a year, then decided to get full insurance. The insurer checked U.S. databases, and the car is listed as flooded in a hurricane in Texas. Turns out they restored a flood-damaged Q7 from the U.S., made a clone based on the VIN of a clean car exported to Europe, and sold it. The guy is left with a beautiful but dead on-paper car. Can't sell it, scary to drive, in case they stop him at the border. Or here's a funnier one. A guy in London bought a Range Rover Sport. Proud, taking photos, showing off. 6 months later, he gets a letter from the police. Your car was involved in a robbery. Turns out the clone was used by robbers and then abandoned. Police traced the VIN from cameras and it led to the honest owner of the original. He then spent a month proving he was on vacation in Spain at the time of the robbery. Alibi, photos with geotags and hotel receipts. The moral of all these stories is one: check, check, and check again. Here's my checklist that I always recommend. Decode the VIN on official sites, like through Porsche, BMW, Mercedes decoders. Find the exact configuration, color, engine, options. Run it through history databases, Carfax, AutoDNA, European registries, US NMVTIS, request factory data, build sheet. Many brands allow this by VIN. Compare the car's photos to factory photos of the same model. Color, wheels, trim, even button layout. Check service history. Did it visit official dealers? Does the mileage match? If the price is way below market, run. It's not a discount, it's a bait. And most important, don't hesitate to hire specialists. Better to pay $200 to $300 for a check than lose $50,000 to $30,000. We've gone pretty deep into this topic, but I haven't even told you about the boldest schemes yet. Clones from cut-ups and constructors, where they take two wrecked cars, assemble one, and slap a VIN from a third. Or about constructors from Japan. Or how clones are used for money laundering. That's all coming up. Friends, hello again. We're continuing our epic breakdown of car clones, and I see you're hooked. This makes me happy, means the topic resonated. In the last part, we got to the machine check checklist and promised to dive into tools, fresh stories, and new scammers' tricks. So buckle up, it's about to get even interesting. I'll add examples, explain exactly where to find info for free, and even share a couple of cases from 2024, 2025, so you understand this problem hasn't gone away, it's only evolved. First, let's finish with the check tools. I said you can do it all yourself without spending a fortune. Here's a detailed guide, step by step, like we're sitting at the computer together checking a suspicious Cayenne or any other premium. Step 1. VIN decoding. This is the foundation. Go to Free Decoders. For Porsche, there's an official service on the manufacturer's site, or universal ones like vindecoder.eu or nibc.org for US cars. Enter the 17-digit code, and voila! Year, factory, engine, factory paint color, main options. In our Cayenne, it immediately showed black metallic, panoramic roof, 2015 facelift. And if the car in front of you is brown and without a panorama, hello, red flag number 1. This takes exactly 30 seconds, and half the clones get weeded out at this stage alone. Step 2. History from databases. In Europe, AutoDNA or Car Vertical. They have free reports with basic info. In the US, Carfax or AutoCheck. If the car is European, check registries like CEPIC, Poland, RDW, Netherlands, or equivalents in other countries. Look for accidents, mileage records, number of owners. In our Porsche, the clone had a service history at official dealers. That's a plus for scammers. It makes the car seem credible. But if the mileage doesn't match or suddenly a total loss from another country pops up, run. Step 3. Factory data. Many brands provide a build sheet by VIN. For Porsche, you contact support or go through a dealer. You get the full list of options. Compare it to the actual car. Is there a compass on the dash, black trim, air suspension? In the clone, there was air suspension that wasn't supposed to be there from the factory. The irony is that they even calibrated it at the service center. Imagine, the technician sees the height adjustment lever, calibrates it, but according to the VIN, the car is supposed to be on coil springs. Oh well, the customer is paying, we'll do it. These little details give it away completely. Now,
Another subtype, constructors from Japan. Auctions like USS or TAA are full of fresh cars with minor damage. They buy, disassemble into major assemblies, engine, transmission, interior, body, ship as parts, and reassemble in Europe or the US. But to register it, you need a VIN from a legal car, so they slap on a clone. Differences are in details. Japanese cars often have different options, wiring, even a different smell in the interior. But the buyer sees a fresh Land Cruiser from Japan at a super price and bites. I'll provide a real case from early 2025. A girl from Prague bought a 2021 Audi Q8 for $48,000. Seller, from Germany, one owner, full service history. She drove it for a couple of months, then at the service station the mechanic says, "Weird, your frame is welded, and the VIN on the frame rail looks suspicious." They checked. It was a total loss in Canada, sold on IAAI, restored in Lithuania, and the VIN taken from a clean Q8 exported to Armenia. The girl was left with a beautiful but illegal car. She can't sell it, she's afraid to drive it in case they reject it at inspection. Or here's a funny story with some humor, though the owner wasn't laughing. A man from London bought a 2022 Porsche Macan at a 2020 price. Thrilled, showing off to friends. 6 months later, police stop him in a parking lot. "Sir, your car is listed as flooded in the US." Turns out it was a constructor. Body from a flood-damaged one in Florida, documents from a clean car from Dubai. The guy joked later, "I thought I bought a sports car, but I bought a submarine on wheels." How to protect yourself from such schemes? Adding to our checklist, check hidden VIN marks. They're not just on the dashboard plate under the glass, but also on frame rails, under the hood, in the trunk, even on seat belts. All must match and look factory original. No signs of removal or stickers. Use a paint thickness gauge on the bonnet. If paint is thicker than 500 to 600 microns somewhere, it was repainted after major repair. Look under carpets, in the trunk, under the spare tire. Search for seams, welding traces, rust in odd places. If the car is from abroad, demand customs clearance and export documents and run it through databases from the country of origin. Friends, these schemes work because people want to save money. Oh, $20,000 cheaper? I'll take it. And then they pay with nerves, time, and money. Better to overpay $5,000 to $10,000 for a clean car than save and then litigate for years. By the way, there are reverse cases too, when owners of originals successfully fight back. In our Cayenne story from Bishkek, the owners gathered all documents from the Berlin dealer, requested factory data, and kept it ready. If the clone surfaced with issues, they could prove their car is the real one. There have been cases where people won lawsuits and removed all bands from the original. And now, let's talk about how to sell your own car without falling victim to a reverse scheme. It happens that scammers buy a clean car, make a clone, and return the original with problems. So always photograph all documents, make copies, keep receipts. And if selling, check the buyer at least through reviews. We've gone deep into the topic, but ahead, how scammers use leasing and loans to create clones, what's new in 2025 with electronic vehicle passports, and how an ordinary person can become a real detective when buying a car. Plus, of course, fresh stories. Can't do without them, otherwise it'd be boring. To be continued. Don't let your guard down. The most interesting is still ahead. I hope you're already armed with a paint gauge and checklist, because now we're going further. We'll talk about how clones are tied to leasing and loans, what's new in 2025 with electronic vehicle passports, and how an ordinary person can turn into a Sherlock Holmes when buying a car. Plus, of course, fresh stories. Can't do without them, otherwise it'd be boring. Let's start with leasing and loans. This is a favorite topic for creating clones because huge money is involved and risks for scammers are minimal. The scheme is simple as an orange. Take an expensive car on lease in one country, say Germany or the US, pay a couple of initial installments to make it look legit, then export the car to another country, Poland, Lithuania, Georgia, or even farther. There, make a clone, forge documents based on the original which you have, register it. The original you keep driving or sell off the books, and of course, stop paying the lease. The leasing company declares the car wanted, enters it into databases, but the clone suffers if it's already registered elsewhere. Meanwhile, the scammer squeezes everything out of the clone, pawns it, takes microloans, sells to an unsuspecting buyer. I saw this scheme with a 2023 BMW M5. A guy leased it in Munich, took it to Riga, made a clone, and sold it in Warsaw for $80,000. The new owner drove for 6 months, then gets a letter from the bank. Your car is pledged. Payments aren't coming in. The guy panics. He bought a clean one. Had to sue, prove he was a bona fide purchaser. He won in the end, but his nerves were shot. Even cooler with car loans. Take a loan against the car, clone, get cash, $40,000 to $50,000, then again in another bank, and another. When it all collapses, bans pile up on the VIN, and the one who buys the car later suffers. In our good old Cayenne, that's exactly what happened. The third owner of the clone racked up loans, the car got loaded with bans, then cleaned up and sold to a new lucky buyer for $25,000. That guy probably still thinks, what a smart guy I am, snagged a Porsche for the price of a Hyundai. But in reality, he's sitting on a powder keg. Now about 2025 and electronic vehicle passports. Here's some good news. Many countries have introduced or are strengthening electronic vehicle passports. In Europe, it's already standard for new cars. In the US, they're testing blockchain solutions. What does this mean? The entire VIN, ownership history, service records, accidents, all in digital form, protected against forgery. Changing data retroactively is almost impossible. If a car is exported, there's an immediate mark in the database. It will become much harder for a clone to appear because forging an electronic PTS isn't just a scanner and printer anymore. It's hacker-level stuff. Plus, databases are starting to link between countries, Europe with the US, Europe with some Asian partners. In 2025, there were already cases where a clone was caught right at the border. The system flagged, this VIN is already registered in another country.
But scammers aren't sleeping. They're switching to older cars, pre-2015 to 2018, where documents are still paper, or to gray imports from countries without electronic PTSs, so the problem won't fully disappear in another 5 to 10 years. And now, let's turn you into a real detective. Here's an expanded guide on how to check a car yourself step by step with real-life examples. First, preparation. Before meeting the seller, ask for the VIN, photos of documents, and tons of car pics, at least 50. Exterior, interior, engine, trunk, VIN everywhere it appears. You can already spot a lot from photos. Step 1. Decode the VIN. Go to Free Services for European cars VIN.eu, for American NICB.org. Get the factory configuration. If the setter says fully loaded, air suspension, panorama, but the VIN shows base on coil springs, goodbye. Step 2. History databases. Car Vertical, Auto DNA, paid but worth it, $20 to $40. Free national registries. In Germany, KBA. In Netherlands, RDW. Look for mileage, accidents, pledges. Step 3. Factory data. Write to the dealer or brand site, get the build sheet. Compare every option. Remember our Cayenne, compass on the dash, yes, no. It's like a fingerprint. Step 4. Visual inspection. Arrive with a paint thickness gauge. Costs about $20 on AliExpress. Check the whole body. Factory paint 100 to 150 microns, repainted parts 300 plus. Look for welding traces, different shades, stickers on windows, should all match. Step 5. Diagnostics. Connect an OBD scanner, check real mileage in the modules, not just on the dash. Get it on a lift, inspect the underbody, frame rails. Step 6. Legal cleanliness. Check the seller, passport, does it match the PTS? Search the car by VIN in pledge registries. In Europe, movable property registers. If everything is clean, congrats, you found a rarity. If even one point is off, walk away. I'll tell you a story where someone almost lost $1 million. In 2025, a guy from Brussels found a perfect 2022 Mercedes S-Class for $70,000. Market $120. Seller, nice uncle, documents in order, service book. The guy was about to pay, but decided to request the build sheet from Mercedes just in case. And what? According to the VIN, the car should be gray, but it's black in front of him, plus no night package. Turns out a clone with repaint and forged options. The guy walked away, saved a ton of money and nerves. That's the power of a simple request. Or the reverse. A girl from Amsterdam was buying a Mini Cooper. Checked everything, all clean, but low price. Decided to risk it. And won. The car was truly clean. The owner was just moving urgently. But that's rare. Friends, the main rule is if the deal seems too good to be true, it almost always is. Better to overpay for peace of mind or at least a professional check than deal with the consequences for years. And now a little humor. Imagine an ad for the Cayenne clone. For sale, Porsche Cayenne 2015, perfect condition, one owner, well almost, unique color, brown metallic with the soul of black, air suspension yes, panorama no for those who prefer stargazing with their own eyes. Price $25K, some haggling possible, but not much. The car was an adventure in itself.